Hi, my name is Crystal Searle. I work with REMAX Ambassadors out of the greater Chattanooga area. And today I'm going to, as quickly as possible, explain the steps to purchasing a home. So the first step is everybody's least favorite part of the process, but it's the most important part of the process. And this is analyzing your finances. So when you are making an offer on the home, you need one of two things. You need a pre-approval letter from a lender or a bank, or if you're paying cash, you need proof of funds. This can be in the form of a bank statement or a letter from the bank basically stating that you have the funds in your account. And the reason you need this is because it shows the seller that you're serious and that you can financially afford the home that you're trying to purchase. We don't want to waste anybody's time and go into a contract and realize later that you don't have the money or the finances to purchase their home. So this is very crucial and very important. We also want you to get this first because, again, I don't want to waste a lot of time and energy going out and showing you homes, and you don't want to fall in love with a home that you just can't financially afford. So this just kind of helps save time. It also saves resources and helps the seller out knowing that you're serious when you're making the offer. So first you need to speak with different lenders or a bank to find the best rate. Yes, you can shop around. Just because you talk to one lender doesn't mean that you have to go with them. They will do a hard credit inquiry because they need to know where you are financially. But I do want to let you know that even though one lender has done this, they won't do it again with the other lenders because they can see that your credit was recently ran and they can go off of that score that the other lender ran it at. So that means that you won't be dinged again if you go with another bank or lender looking at your credit score. If you are not quite there yet, lenders are very helpful resources into giving you guides on what you need to do to get there, to get ready to be able to purchase. And they're more than happy to work with you. They might work with you for 3 months, 6 months, maybe up to a year, because they want you to be able to get into a home. So after we get you that pre-approval letter, then you can go out and find a realtor, and we are probably going to ask you to sign a buyer's rep agreement with us. Now, I know this sounds really scary. People don't like getting into contracts with people, but let me help enlighten you on how we get paid. So realtors get paid through the commission from the sale of the home. We do not get salaries. REMAX Ambassadors does not pay me. We get paid commission only. So by creating a buyer's rep agreement, we are creating a fiduciary relationship, a working relationship where both of us are performing. You're agreeing to use us exclusively because I would hate to go out and show you thousands of homes and then you end up buying one of those homes with someone else. That's kind of unfair to me and my time. It also helps us work harder for you because when we get into that working relationship, we're basically working for you. So you want someone to work really hard for you and help you get into a home. So this is actually a good thing because it helps create a relationship with us, a working relationship. The agent will help you throughout the process in finding a home. They can give you any home tour that you want, and you can consult them on real estate matters and contracts. So it's actually a really good thing to have a buyer's rep agreement because basically we're working for you when that happens. And it helps us legally represent you in the transaction. And something also to think about, just because you sign a buyer's rep agreement doesn't mean you can't get out of it. If for some reason it's not working, or maybe you decide to go somewhere else for whatever reason, you can ask to be released from the buyer's rep agreement. Okay, reasons not to contact the listing agent. So a lot of people don't understand that there's two sides to the transaction. There's a selling side and the buyer side, and each of you are entitled to your own representation in the process. And a lot of times people will drive around, they will find a house that they just love, they call the listing agent on the sign, and they get the listing agent to help them type up a contract and get into contract with the home. And that's all right, but let me just let you know what's happening. The listing agent is actually working for the seller. So just like the buyer's rep agreement, the listing agent has also developed a listing agreement with the seller. The listing agent is interested in getting the seller the best deal because they're in a working relationship together. That's the listing agent's goal, is to protect the seller. The seller's needs will always be number one to them. You will get little or no consulting when this happens. They might give you some resources of things to go look up and look at if you're asking them a bunch of questions, but they will not consult with you because at the end of the day, again, they are working for the seller. You will not be represented in the transaction. Most of the time, they will have you sign an agency agreement that states that they are working for the seller and you are unrepresented in the transaction. And that kind of stinks because, everybody needs to have representation in the transaction. It's a big deal. You want to be represented. And here's a little fact. So if the home you are wanting to purchase is offering a buyer's commission, then most of the time the buyers do not pay the buyer's agents. So what this means is that the listing agreement has already set the commission that they're agreeing to pay the buyer's agents from the sale of the home. So you are rarely going to write a check or use your own credit card for a buyer's agent. The only time that might happen is if the home you really want is refusing to give any commission to the buyer's side. Then we would go back to our buyer's rep agreement that you signed and kind of explain that we do not work for free. So we are owed whatever commission that we came up with in the buyer's rep agreement, but that is really rare. Most of the time, the sellers do agree to pay the buyer's commission through the sale of the home. So that's something you usually don't have to worry about. So like I'm saying, why would you turn down help and consultation when you're not having to really pay that out of pocket? Okay, so after we are, finished dealing with getting you pre-approved and you're signing the buyer's rep agreement with us, now is the fun part. This is the home search. So after you are pre-approved and know what you can afford, the fun begins. Realtors can set up searches in the MLS. If you don't know what the MLS is, that is the multiple listing service, and only realtors have access to that. Now, I understand nowadays you can go on Zillow, you can go on realtor.com, but it is often delayed a little bit with that. We get the most current access to listings. So MLS will always have it updated minute by minute, where Zillow and realtor.com might be a few hours delayed in updating if a home is under contract or if a home comes on the market. Realtors can show any home in our MLS or possibly state, depending on where you're at. That's a misconception. Sometimes people think, oh, well, this home is being listed by RE/MAX, so I can only go with a RE/MAX agent, which is not true. We have access to any of the homes that are listed in our MLS. Buyers need to research area, crime, and schools. Unfortunately, we are under the Code of Ethics and the Fair Housing laws. We are actually not really allowed to discuss things like crime and schools because it's just a violation of the Fair Housing Law Act. I know it kind of stinks because you kind of want our expertise on that, but we are going to encourage you to do your research and your due diligence. So make sure that you're kind of aware of the area and the crime statistics and schools. I mean, this can easily be found online nowadays. So yes, you need to do your own research on that. And basically try to narrow the amount of homes seen down or split up the days. I know it can become a blur a lot of times if you're seeing how, like if we go out and look at 10 houses today, you're not going to remember the difference between the first one or the last one. It really helps nowadays online. You can do virtual tours and you see a lot of pictures of the home. So you already kind of have it in your head what you're expecting the home to look like. So also this kind of helps respect our time a little bit. So try to do your best to narrow down to your most favorite that you want to go see, because this kind of just helps in the process. I mean, if we have too many options to pick from, then you're not going to end up picking a home. So step 4 is going under contract. Now, just because you make an offer does not mean that you're automatically under contract. It does take two parties to agree to the contract. So that means that the sellers have to agree to your contract and terms. This can happen for days sometimes too. A lot of times they might counter offer whatever offer that you make. So just kind of be aware that this can take several days to get under contract, and also be aware that unfortunately sometimes they don't accept your offer and you need to move on to a different home. But let's pretend that they did accept your offer and kind of talk about what's in that contract. So when you go under contract, the first thing that happens is your inspection period begins immediately. And in the contract, you're going to set up a time frame for how many days you want for the inspection. Usually inspectors can get out there pretty quickly. So inspection periods are usually only 7 to 10 days, maybe 15 at the most. I mean, they can get out there usually pretty quickly. And then once they do the inspection, there is something called the resolution period, especially in the Tennessee contracts. The resolution period is going to be the time that you are negotiating stuff that might have come up in the inspection. So you can either negotiate for some money at closing to help you fix the things that you saw that you didn't want in the home. You might negotiate a lower purchase price, or you might negotiate for them to fix those things before you move into the home. So that all that happens during the resolution period. Then once you get past inspection, an appraisal is ordered. Now this usually happens through the lender, and that's on the lender side, but there is going to be some cost too. Going back to inspections. Inspections are usually around $300 to $500. Appraisals as well, so that's something you need to think about. Then we have the title search that's also happening with title. They want to make sure that nothing is coming up on the title, that there's no easements to the property, that there's nobody having claims to the property. So that's all going to happen during the title search. And then the fifth thing that's happening is the loan writing. So basically once all this is that's kind of the last part of the process is if you are getting a loan, they will write up the loan and get that approved. Now, most people really don't understand what a contingency is, and contingencies are actually really important to have in your contract. The most common type of contingencies are the inspection contingency and financial contingency. Sometimes we have a contingency based on the sale of your current home. And then if you are buying land, you'll want a perk test done. So you want some sort of contingency that allows that. And then sometimes in the special stipulations part of the contract, you might put some sort of special contingency that might pertain to you. Inspection is really important because you don't want to buy a home that has a lot of issues with it that can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix. So the inspection contingency kind of protects you from having to purchase a home like that. So if you have that contingency in your contract, that means as long as you're inside of your inspection window, you can legally back out of the contract. Appraisal contingency is usually with getting it financed. The home has to appraise at the value you're trying to purchase it for. And if it doesn't, then either you're going to renegotiate with the seller to try to get them to lower the price of the home of what it appraised at. Most of the time they will, because they'll have a hard time getting a buyer that's trying to get financed. Or if they don't, you might have to back out of the home because the bank or lender will not lend you money. They're not going to lend you money for something that didn't appraise at that amount. Financial contingency kind of protects you if you, for some reason, can't get financed through this process, then you're able to legally back out of the contract because you couldn't get financing for it. And then the home sale contingency protects you if something happens with your current home and you're not able to sell it, then you can legally back out of the contract. Something I forgot to put on here too is about earnest money. You usually put down some sort of earnest money for the seller, which will be held in an escrow account. And what happens is if you have these contingencies on your contract and you can legally back out of the contract, then most of the time you do receive the earnest money back. Now, if you decide to back out of the contract for something outside of the contingency, like you just woke up one day and you don't like the home and you just don't want to purchase it anymore, then you are risking forfeiting your earnest money and the seller will get to keep that money. Now, if everything goes through and we make it to closing, then the earnest money will get applied as a credit at closing to your closing costs. So we have made it through inspection, we've made it through appraisal, they have been underwriting your loan, so now we're ready for closing day. Now I do like to let everybody know that if you are seeking financing, they do usually say that it takes up to 30 days, sometimes 45 days to close, so that's something you need to think about as well. So before closing with your realtor, you will do a final walkthrough because you want to make sure that the home you're purchasing is in the condition that you saw it in, especially if it's been almost 30 days since you've seen the home and maybe they are currently still living in the home. You would hate to purchase the home and find out that there's a huge hole in the ceiling now that wasn't there before. So it's just making sure that you understand what you're purchasing. You usually do it the day before closing or on the day of closing is the best, because the closer to closing you can do it, the better, because you know what the home is going to look like. I suggest wiring the money a day before closing, because what will happen is even if you make it to the closing table and you sign all the documents, if it's not funded, we can't legally hand you over the keys to the home. So you want to make sure that the funds make it, especially if you have an afternoon closing and say you wire the money like at 4 p.m. and the banks are closing, there's a good chance that you're not going to get funded until the next day. So it's just better if you have the funds sitting in your bank account to make sure you wire it a day before closing. That way you can get the keys upon closing. Make sure you bring your driver's license. Now, cash closings are quicker than if you're getting a loan because obviously you're not signing mortgage documents and things like that. But the whole process is usually about an hour. Again, if you're doing cash, it might be only 15 minutes. Once funding clears, then we can give you the keys and it's time to celebrate and move into your new home. Now, something else we didn't talk about, but I want to briefly state is remember, regardless if you're doing a cash transaction or not, there are still title fees. So do be aware that you need to calculate closing costs and title fees in this. Nothing's for free. People don't work for free. So even if it's a cash transaction, now it's usually not as much. A cash transaction might only be like $1,200 depending on the price, but closing costs for an actual home can be thousands of dollars. It could be like $11,000, $15,000. Again, it usually depends on the price of the home, but make sure that you have all of that calculated and you're not surprised when you get that closing statement. I have tried my best to do this in a nutshell. I'm sure there's a lot of things that I didn't discuss. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to email me. It's just my name, crystalsearle@gmail.com. My phone number is 423-677-4516. Again, I serve the greater Chattanooga area, so I'm licensed in both Tennessee and Georgia. If you are planning to purchase a home anytime soon, I would love to help you, and I hope I can get you into something because it is fun and exciting process. Here is some other resources of people who can help. I've worked with these lenders before. David is at Lender One. He's a really good resource. Richard Guerrero is with Summit Funding. I've also worked with Holly Graham. She's kind of helped on some land transactions because a lot of times lenders do not lend money for land, but TVFCU Credit Union does. I use Steve Hicks Lodestar for inspections. He's really good. He goes into detail. He uses video explanations. Rick Jackson is also a good resource for home inspector. He actually goes a little bit further out, I believe, than Steve. So if you're trying to purchase a home a little bit further away from Chattanooga, Rick would be a good one to call. And then we like to use the Title Co. with Ashley. She's a title company. She's fantastic. She is more than happy to answer any title questions you have and give you estimates of closing costs. And that will help too in the process. Again, I hope you guys are having a wonderful day and thank you for listening. And again, please reach out to me if you're looking to purchase a home in the Chattanooga area.